You are disgusted by these lyrics.
Listen, Sheila, I was born in Manchester. I've lived in Manchester all my life. I live 3 miles from the arena. I went to the funeral of the youngest victim, 8-year-old Saffie Roussos. And it had taken 6 weeks for that funeral to take place because Saffie's mother was so badly injured. She was still in hospital. Anybody who lives in Manchester, one of your callers not long ago said something about, well, let's speak to somebody from Manchester who's been affected. I'm that person. Luckily, none of my family or friends were there. But I know I've met people subsequently. I go to all the memorials. As I say, I went to Saffie's funeral. For anyone to say, oh, it's not offensive. If anyone wanted to make a song about a bombing, he could have made a fictitious one up. He didn't have to reference one that was only a couple of years ago, where people are still in hospital or receiving treatment. I think it was a deliberate attempt to stir up controversy. I mean, you might say in the freedom of speech you can make a song, as I say, about a bombing, but to make reference to a particular one is, I think, just looking for trouble. And also you had a guest on. Now, you're from Liverpool, aren't you, Sheila?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So someone said before that I don't like Mondays. It was written and it was accepted and it got to number 1 and so forth. That was before Dunblane. So if somebody, so in 1978 when that song came out, Sheila, it was acceptable to make 8 noises at black players on the pitch. It was acceptable to make gassy noises to Tottenham fans. It was acceptable. Afghani was still on television. Just because something was acceptable 40 years ago doesn't mean it's still acceptable now. And
but
if I'd made a song about Hillsborough, it's no freedom of expression. As a Liverpudlian yourself, Sheila, I'm not being funny on this, would you say, well, it's freedom of speech? The guy you had on who said that about freedom of speech, if I said to him, he's a Liverpudlian like you, if I said, okay, so I'll make a song about Hillsborough.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I've seen references to Hillsborough made in all kinds of ways, some good, some bad. But I actually think I would still say that falls short of something that should be banned, Denise, because, and for example, I remember years ago going to the Folk Awards, the Folk Music Awards in the, I can't remember the venue of it at the time, but the winning song of the year was a song that was explicitly about the shooting of Jean-Charles de Menezes by the Met. And it was in support of him and his family. It was absolutely blisteringly critical of the Met. So I suppose on that basis, it's a song in support of. But it was also, pretty brutal. And it was there being celebrated. I think rightly it was being celebrated because it was that is an event that should never be forgotten and a mistake that should never be forgotten. And so, I don't know, it's difficult to draw the line sometimes, is what I would say.
That song, why was the purpose of it? Was it to draw attention? I know the guy, it was a Brazilian guy who shot him in the back and it was the wrong person, wasn't it? I'm very aware of that, Sheila. I work in community relations in Manchester. I'm very aware of that. Why was that song written? Was it to draw attention to a terrible injustice that happened?
Well, it was, yes, that's the point, yeah.
Let's say why the song was written. Was it deliberately to draw controversy?
Well, maybe,
or try to help the cause? Or was it just to sell albums or sell controversy to people by the... It's the meaning behind.
It is, but what's your interpretation? But Denise, let me speak, Denise. What's your interpretation of what Eminem means? I mean, he may say, I'm describing murderous people and murderous acts, and this was an example of one.
Well, I just think maybe I'm a bit more sensitive because I come from Manchester.
Oh, completely understandably.
Let him come to Manchester, to the middle of Manchester, and sing that song. If he doesn't think he's offended people, let him come to the middle of in Manchester and sing his song to all the Mancunians to see what happens. That's all I will say, Sheila.
No, and I completely understand, Denise, why you and others would be deeply offended by it. To my mind, I wouldn't dream of doing it. I'm not an artist, I'm not a musician, so we'll have a different sensibility about life. I would put the feelings of the people of Manchester, and particularly the victims and their families, to the fore, rather than write something like that. But I wouldn't stay away, if I was a writer or a poet, or I wouldn't stay away from such issues, because they're important that we talk about them and consider them in those arenas.
Yeah, but you didn't have to mention that. You can make a song about a bomb going off without mentioning Manchester, really. You can say at Joe Blogg's arena. You don't have to.
Do you think he is piggybacking her fame?
He doesn't have to mention. All I will say, Sheila, the only thing I can keep repeating like I'm a parrot, if he doesn't think it's upset people, let him come to the middle of Manchester and sing that song and see what happens. Honestly, that's all I can say.